Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to speak at the conference here. Today, I'm going to be discussing one of my favorite topics, which is personal branding for data scientists. So, personal branding, I think, in the data science domain or in any technical domain, gets a little bit of a bad rap. It's very fuzzy, it's amorphous. What does a personal brand or even any brand out there mean? And hopefully, in this conversation, what I'm going to do is describe what a personal brand actually is, how we can understand it better, some of the ways that you can grow your personal brand so that it has really tremendous positive impacts on your career. And I'll also go through a couple just case studies from my experience that have shown the value of creating this brand that I've generated over the last couple of years. So starting out, wouldn't it be nice if you were able to attract job opportunities to you? You know, recruiters and hiring managers are reaching out to you rather than you going out to this, applying to all these companies that are out there trying to land your first job or maybe a next job. Them coming to you with opportunities that you would like saves you a lot of time. It also gives you a higher chance to land those positions. Wouldn't it also be nice if you were able to send a LinkedIn message and email to people that you really were interested in connecting with and communicating with and learning from, and them having a pretty high chance, a high probability of actually getting back to you, responding to you, and not ghosting you? Also, wouldn't it be great if opportunities that you didn't even realize were out there started showing up in your inbox or at your doorstep or wherever it might be that potentially were related to either like good career opportunities and work, different ways to generate income, a lot of these different things that, again, were not on your radar to begin with. These three are all major benefits of having a strong personal brand. I'll introduce myself now. So my name is Ken G. I'm the head of data science at Scouts Consulting Group. And I'm probably better known now for a lot of the content that I produce, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on LinkedIn, Twitter, my Discord server for the 66 Days of Data, on GitHub, Medium, through my podcast on Spotify, or now I'm dabbling in LinkedIn a little bit. This isn't to flex on everyone with my social media presence. It's actually to prove a really important point, and that is that in 2021, your brand is quantifiable, right? We can measure things in terms of followers, in terms of engagement, in terms of impressions, and how big your reach is. And this should be a blessing or something really exciting for anyone in this audience who's a data scientist, right? If there's something that we can measure and we can quantify, we can understand it better, and we also can do very actionable things to improve it or change it or iterate on it or whatever that might be. And so that's the first really big thing that I want everyone to take away is that no longer is your brand this amorphous thing, this like weird blob on some sort of strange perverse visualization that branding and marketing companies have made. Your brand is something that is like ones and zeros. It is numbers. It is metrics. We always used to look and say, okay, Coca-Cola is a strong brand. What does that mean? And of course, they could probably attach some dollar value to that now. But now we can take apart Coca-Cola and say, okay, how many people does it reach per year? How many people actually engage with the campaigns that they have? How many views do they get if they post a video on a certain platform? To me, that is a lot more meaningful than saying that they just have a strong brand, right? Now, that's talking about companies. What does that mean for you? How do we define what a strong brand is and what your brand is? So what your brand is, in my mind, breaks down into three things. So the first is the credibility that's conveyed when someone searches for you online. So do you know what you're talking about? Have you written a blog post or do you have a GitHub repo about a specific topic that someone is searching you based on? Who do you associate with online? Are you in circles with credible people? Have you engaged with a lot of people or have they engaged with you that have some social proof, that have done some really cool things within this space? And do you know what you're talking about? Do you have a track record of being present on these platforms and producing things of value to other people? And it's not like, for example, if I was to come on this and I just started posting on social media yesterday, and or on any of these platforms I just started creating, and I was trying to talk to you about brand, that probably wouldn't be as meaningful as if you can go on and see that I've been producing a lot of content on these different platforms for the last couple of years, right? The next thing is your ability to be found through browsing channels. So if someone searches data science on Google or on YouTube, I would imagine one of my videos would come up. To me, that suggests that I have a powerful enough brand that it could be recommended by these different platforms. I'll also say that if you want to focus in a specific area, let's say for me, it's always been sports and sports analytics. Someone searching sports analytics, if they can easily find something that I've produced related to that, that is the essence or one signaling of a pretty strong brand. And if you think about discoverability, that's a way that a lot of the things that you would like to have happen, or a lot of the conversations in the world that are out there that you'd like to be a part of, start coming to you, just being found on these platforms. The third thing is not related to the size of your brand, but it's related to like the nature of your brand. Is there a negative or is there positive sentiment around what you share and what you're putting out there? So I think that there's a lot of pretty clear examples of strong positive brands, but there's also, as particularly in politics, examples of very strong but negative brands. And that's something that we want to be careful of. I think more and more so, having a strong brand, regardless of if it's negative or positive, can create opportunities for you either way. But I would highly recommend focusing on creating a positive sentiment around the things that you put out into the world and on the internet. Now, those three things that I described, right, the credibility, the findability, and the sentiment, they can all be quantified pretty easily as well. So what you share, the content of what you put out there, so whether that is the topics or the volume or the channels that you're using, those are very measurable. How far they reach. On almost every platform online, you can track the impressions of a post, or how many people they reach, or how many people have viewed a video or a topic or a post. The next thing is you can also see how people feel about it in a certain way. And one of the best ways is through engagement. So we can engage in a couple different ways. We can engage with likes or reactions, or you can engage with comments. And the different types of engagement actually show like more strength or more interest of your consumers and your background. And so something that touches on the sentiment that I just talked about in the previous slide is that on YouTube, their algorithm, they actually count likes for a video and dislikes equally in terms of pushing it to people. They both just count them as engagements, right? And the more engagement something gets, the more likely it is that they push it to other people, or to push it to more viewers. And that is to say that things that are controversial, or things that are just engaged with constantly, they do help to create a brand in some way. They help you to grow a brand. Do I recommend actually doing controversial things routinely? Absolutely not, because if your goal is to get a job, that could hinder you. If your goal is to maximize on some other thing where a negative brand could hurt you, that is not a really good idea. But if your goal is just to grow and expand, and you look at, like, for example, Elon Musk, right? He has a very strong, huge brand. I'd say that sentiment about him is a little bit mixed a lot of the time, but I don't think that has negatively impacted him in any way, shape, or form. So it's all about the goals that you have for your brand and what you want to accomplish. I think that that's something I really want to level set and touch on a little bit more in an approximate slide here. So before I stop talking about what your brand is, I think I want to share my favorite analogy for a brand, and that is that I look at a brand, or like the quality of your brand, as having a presence or a force similar to gravity. So as we build our brand, as it grows, it starts to attract more opportunities to us. Very much like a planet, the larger it gets, the more mass it has, the more of a gravitational force that it has to bring things to it, whether it's space debris, whatever it is. Fortunately for us as data scientists, the space debris could be job opportunities, sponsorship opportunities, entrepreneurial ventures, whatever that might be. And the cool thing about creating all this content and putting yourself out there is that, when you are building this brand, when you put something out into the internet, you can go to sleep and people can still find this content. They're coming to you, it's being served to them, and you don't have to be active about growing your presence, about forwarding your career, about expanding your brand. This is something that can happen organically with the tools that we have now. So an example of that, I think a really poignant one, particularly to me, is how I got started with branding, and particularly on YouTube. So me breaking into YouTube was honestly a complete accident. I was doing work for a project in grad school. It was a deep learning project. I had a lot of fun with it, and I was taking the course online. And so essentially, I had to submit a presentation to the class and to the professor, and it had to be a recorded presentation. And so I just put it up on YouTube. I shared the link. I didn't think anything about it. I didn't think anyone would watch it except for my class. And then I forgot about it. And 5 months later, I'm applying for different internships. And the first interview I go into, the interviewer asked me about it. He says, "Oh, I saw you did this interesting project. Can you walk me through it?" And to me, that was a light bulb moment. I was like, I did not think about this project. I had no concept of it. Um, for the last 5 months, I almost forgot that I did it. But this person is bringing it up and talking about it, and they're very excited about it. You know, the reach of that project that I just put out there and did nothing with was significantly further than I thought it was. And I actually had 3 more interviews for internships, and 2 of those interviews, people brought it up as well. And I'm realizing now that, okay, if they just search my name, this was one of the first things that came up. And it's a pretty common practice now if you're interviewing people to just Google the interview candidate or look them up on LinkedIn or some of these other platforms. I also realized after this had happened that I went back and I checked the YouTube stats, and a pretty sizable amount of people had viewed the video. At the time, you know, I was looking at maybe 1,000 people had watched that video, and I'd gained, I think, 100 new subscribers. Right? To me, that was astronomical numbers at the time, and it got me excited about producing more content. Like, if people liked this, what else would I enjoy making, but could also help people, or you know, would people find interesting? And so I started with another video, maybe about a year later, which was another class project. And then I started making a couple of videos a week. And what I found from that was, this was now when I was applying for actual jobs, it wasn't just internships. A lot of recruiters started reaching out to me just based on those videos that I was producing. It wasn't, I wasn't showing like incredible, thrilling data science work. What I was talking about is how I transitioned, or how I was transitioning from management consulting into data science. But just the fact that I was on their radar, and that I guess I was also conveying through my content that I had some useful communication skills, right? It was only 2 data points. I showed nothing about the quality of my data science work aside from maybe my projects, but I was getting a lot of attention, and this helped me to land quite a few internship opportunities, job opportunities, whatever that might be. Fortunately, many of them I turned down because I really enjoy the work that I do now. So after talking about how, like, you know, my brand and these realizations came into play, I also think it's important to think about, how do you specifically grow your brand? Are there actionable, concrete things that you can do? Before I do that, I think we should talk about social media. So I kind of hate social media. I think it's very useful for me in my career, but it's very addictive to me. I can't seem to stop scrolling. I have a lot of problems with it. On the flip side, we can leverage the addictiveness, so like the algorithms behind these things, to our advantage. And social media is really powerful if we can stop using it for the things that we, for our vices, and start using it to further our career and our business. So for example, on YouTube, if I make a video and it's a decent video, some people watch it, I don't have to do anything, and they will push that video to viewers. Same thing on TikTok, same thing on Instagram, and a little bit on LinkedIn. To me, that's unbelievable. I don't have to do the hard work of growing my brand. I don't have to be going to networking events, shaking hands, kissing babies. I don't have to go and cold email a bunch of people just to have them talk to me, or hear what I'm talking about. I can produce content that I believe is interesting. I can put it on the internet, and it can get picked up by one of these algorithms and circulated to a lot of people. The power of social media to be used in that way, I think, is very often overlooked, and something that a lot more people should experiment with. To me, that is one of the huge benefits here. And again, of using social media in a way that is positive for your career, rather than potentially extremely negative if you just get it in one of those doom scroll loops on Instagram. To that point, I really think that you should focus primarily on one social platform that is aligned with your goals. So for me, my goals were really education related. Like, I liked making videos. That was fun to me. That's kind of one element of the goal. But I also have always viewed myself sort of as a teacher, or someone that did really well with conveying information to others. in grad school and in undergrad, I would always lead study groups. That's something that I felt really confident in, is that if I know the material well enough that I can teach it to others, then I can probably pass the test that's coming up, right? And for most people in this chat, you're probably looking to further your career. And to that, I would say really focus on LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is a really good platform. It's a professional platform. You don't have to deal with a lot of the really interesting comments that you get on YouTube, for example. But it also is very in line with landing a job or creating consulting opportunities or whatever it might be that you're focused on. I would say focus almost all of your attention on that singular platform and let everything else trickle into those things. So my primary focus was on YouTube. The extent of me using LinkedIn in the past or Twitter or even Instagram was me sharing my my YouTube videos on those platforms. And I was still able to grow a really strong and like rich and engaged community on all of those platforms just from trickling down from that one other platform. I think a lot of people, including myself, get freaked out about, oh, I have to manage all of these different profiles and keep people engaged all the time. But I really wouldn't recommend doing that. Your brand should be something that is starting on one channel and can bleed into other ones. I also think, if you're really focused on jobs, GitHub is an incredible platform as well. You don't think of GitHub being shared quite as socially, but that to me is one of the strongest places where you can grow your brand. And the key with all of these things is producing content, right? Is just putting yourself out there, sharing your experiences. And as you evolve, you want to start thinking about the value that you create for other people. So it doesn't have to be that you're putting educational YouTube videos out there. That's something that I found success in. That's something I personally really enjoyed. But you can also share your story, share your experiences, which creates value for other people. If I'm 2 months ahead of someone else learning data science and they watch my video, they can still learn something from it. You don't have to be an expert in any field to be able to share your experience in it and what you've learned, your successes and your failures. You can also just forward on and aggregate information. Some of the biggest Twitter users out there related to data science, they just find cool stuff, they cite it, and they share that with their communities. I know that I can go to like a Steve Norrie and he's going to have really cool cutting edge AI type tweets that I'm going to be fascinated with, right? That is a really strong way to grow your brand without really doing that much of your own work. And that's totally okay, as long as you are citing your sources and aggregating. I mean, there's even value in simplifying resources, right? Where I'm taking like 4 or 5 complex papers on a topic, I'm citing them, and I'm talking about like what that algorithm does or the limitations of this in more plain English to reach a broader audience. That is a way to create value for people. You can also create value by engaging in communities. For example, Stack Overflow. If you're going in and answering a lot of questions and you're creating value for people, that is something to be proud of. That's something to share. That's something that actually could potentially land you an opportunity. Same thing goes on Kaggle and interacting with the forums. The last way that I think is a very unique way to build a brand is through engaging even more in those specific communities and even creating them. So something that I started, I guess it was almost 2 years ago, was the 66 Days of Data community. So I'm a huge believer in the power of habit. I'm a huge believer in the value of creating systems in your life that are sustainable. And learning data science, in my mind, is not something that you just do in one shot, right? It's something that the field is always changing, the field is always evolving and growing, and we should be creating a daily habit of learning or a weekly habit of learning to have success over the and longevity in our careers. So I stole 66 days from the book Atomic Habits. In it, they say that the average amount of time to ingrain a new habit is around 66 days. As a data scientist, I realize there are problems with averages, especially in something like that, but it was pretty catchy, so I stuck with it, right? But the idea is that every day you learn data science, every day for 66 days, you learn some data science skills and you share about them on your social media of choice, right? To me, that does 2 things, 3 things actually. So one, it helps you develop that habit of of daily learning, which is going to help you in your entire data science career, because the learning never stops, right? We're continually having to do that to evolve and get better. The second thing is by sharing, you're creating the track record that I described. You're showing your progress, you're sharing your experience, and that is the first thing that it takes to really grow your brand, is just putting yourself out there, making that first post. The last thing is that with this community, you're able to hold other people accountable and they're able to hold you accountable. And one of the coolest things that I've been able to see as someone who created the community is that other people have taken ownership of this community and they've been really engaged in it, particularly the admins. I've been able to see how they're regarded in these circles, especially if they're helping and they're continually engaging with the community in their own way. If any of these people, after I've seen their work that they've done in this community, were to reach out to me and say, hey, I'm looking for an opportunity, whatever it might be, I'd be more than happy to forward them on, because they've shown the interest and the value in that specific community that we've built here. So if you don't have a community that you see matches your personal interests, I recommend just building your own community. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be 10, 15,000 like the 66 Days of Data community. It can be small and it can grow, but you can make it your own, and that can be a part of your brand as well. The next way that I think is really relevant to grow your brand is through collaboration. This is some of the thumbnails from my podcast where I've interviewed over 70 data scientists. I've actually made friends with a lot of these data scientists. The funny thing about a podcast is if you sit down and talk with someone for an hour and a half, it's pretty hard not to like them after hearing their story, right? And Stephanie here in the bottom right corner, she actually gave an awesome presentation earlier today. So if you haven't checked it out, definitely go review that one when they're live again. But to me, you get a lot of benefits from working with other people. One, you get to leverage their brand. Every single person that I've had on the podcast has shared the podcast episode, right? They've shared the conversation that we had with their network and their group. And there's also a credibility that's associated with interviewing and collaborating with people, right? If some of them have done really incredible stuff and I've had them on my show, or I've co-written a blog with them, or I've had them in a YouTube video or something else, part of the goodwill that they've created sticks to me a little bit. And I'm not saying to go sniping credibility from a bunch of different people, but that is one way to effectively enhance your brand and create value for other people, as well as letting them tell their story, letting them, showing them that you're willing to put in work into something as well, and making something that's very mutually beneficial. I can't say enough good things about collaboration, and that could even go for like a GitHub repo or a personal project. I love doing those. I've done a couple of those on YouTube with friends, and I'm continuing to do those because I see so much value in them. And that's a really easy way, if you work with someone who's a bigger brand than you, to grow your brand extremely rapidly. The next thing that I think is really important, and I start putting a bunch of pictures of dogs kind of late in the presentations, because I know we're right before break and I want to keep everyone excited and into it. But it's setting clear expectations about the type of content that you're going to produce and when you're going to produce it. So a lot of people, for example, if I'm making videos about a wide range of topics and I don't have a strong enough brand, not many people are going to watch them, because they're going for the content before the individual person and their brand. You have to get to this critical mass of people being interested in your brand for the sake of the brand, because they like you or they like what you're saying, before you stop producing like very specific value added content. Like there's a certain point, especially if someone is doing content creation for a profession, which I don't, but if you can reach the point where people will watch a video you post just because it's you posting it and not necessarily for the content, that's when you've effectively made it to the next level of branding. I'm very far from that point, but I think it's something to think about in terms of a holy grail of branding is, how much value can you create for other people? How much information you can provide, whether it's education, whatever that might be, that you've endeared yourself to them enough that they're willing to watch whatever you put out, or read whatever you put out, or react to whatever you put out, just because you're putting it out just because you're the person that's putting it out, and you've created this incredible track record with them. I think there's also something to be said about consistency. and making sure that you put things out in a relatively structured manner. And if you're going to be taking breaks or doing anything like that, people know why you're doing that. There's sometimes like good stories to be had out of a break if it's unplanned, and you can build based on that. But I wouldn't really recommend that. That might be a little bit more of an advanced branding technique. To that point, another fairly advanced technique, if you're looking to take your brand to the next level, is actually analyzing your data. I would imagine most people here are data scientists or interested in data science, and like there's a lot of data out there on your brand, particularly on YouTube. That's legitimately one of the things that really drew me to the platform to begin with, right? Is that there is so much information when someone watches a video or when they interact with it, and I can learn about the best times to post videos, the best topics to post on, the best days, the best the best thumbnails to make. To me, that intellectual challenge of forwarding my brand through math and statistics was unbelievably exciting, and I really get I wouldn't say I get like a high on it, but I really enjoyed that process, and that's what made me so excited about the branding to begin with. Before I was saying this branding is so fuzzy, this growth is historically pretty amorphous, but now this is a data problem. Now this is a data science challenge, and that got me really excited about focusing more on it. And you can do it too. You can do it on Twitter, you can do it on LinkedIn, you can do it on YouTube, and I highly recommend you do. Not something that I think is integral to building a big and healthy and valuable brand, but it's something that if you want to take your branding to the next level, you should absolutely do. Before I close, I think it's also important to address something that people are terrified of, and that is making their first post or putting themselves out there. And something I want to really highlight is that the more content that you produce, the more you share, the more you put yourself out there, the less nervous you get, the less anxiety you get about putting any any individual piece of content out there, right? At first, it's like you have a thimble, right? And your first post is taking like a little water of that thimble and dropping it into a shot glass. Like you can see the impact of the new water in the shot glass, right? Then when you produce more, you take that same thimble and you dump it into a pitcher of water. Like the impact is significantly smaller. Then maybe a bathtub, and then eventually you're taking a thimble of water and dumping it into the ocean. The body of work that you've created, the body of water, I think the metaphor breaks down, but the body of work that you've created over time will overshadow any of the small idiosyncrasies you might have in your content. People should be looking at the big things that you've done rather than the individual small, like, if I mispronounce a word or something like that, which I've done quite a bit. Obviously, there are some big things that you want to do, in today's day and age, there are some things you definitely should not put on the internet, and you can be completely shut down for things like that. But for the most part, if you're producing value for other people, they're going to be looking at the large scope of things that you're doing. Now, my last thing, again, another dog picture. To that point, the biggest thing that you can do today, tomorrow, whenever it might be, is to get started. Just start thinking about growing your brand and thinking about the platform and the channel and just putting yourself out there. Before I end, I really want to talk about some of the benefits that branding has given me. So the first was that once I started producing a brand, a tremendous amount of job opportunities opened up, and a lot of the ones that I was interested actually started reaching out to me. I've also been able to speak at awesome conferences like this and get invited to do these repeatedly, which I really enjoy, and I'm happy that I can talk about this, hopefully help you grow your brand, and at the same time, I'm also growing my brand. I've also been able to be approached for my content by a lot of sponsors, in particular Z by HP. I'm one of their global ambassadors, and I've had an incredible experience working with them. I've been able to grow my communities, the 66 Days of Data, my podcast, and have incredible people coming on. And not to mention, these people are recommending me or referring me to their friends who are also incredibly interesting. And so I'm able to grow my brand, grow my network, and grow these experiences for myself in an incredibly powerful and meaningful way. The last thing I want to touch on is just, I usually like it when people just kind of spark note it for me. Maybe this could have saved you legitimately like 25 minutes of hearing me ramble on, but I still think it's useful. So the first thing is to remember that in 2021 going forward, your brand is quantifiable. Like as a data scientist, again, you should be absolutely stoked about this. Also, as you build your brand, it acts like a gravitational force that brings you opportunities. Like the social media landscape actually will push your content and create this momentum for you. You should choose a very specific platform that aligns with your goals, and you should focus on creating value for others in your online interactions. And remember, the more that you create, the less nervous you feel about creating. Finally, get started. Now, I have one action item. I recommend that everyone here take control of your brand, produce content, and if you want, you can tag me in it. I engage with almost all of the content that I'm tagged in, and if I really like it, I'll share it and help you grow your brand even further. This is something I recommend if you think someone that you are trying to get in contact with, or someone that you're interested in communicating with, uh, if you have some content or a blog post or whatever you think they'd be interested in, tag them. Don't tag like every content creator under the sun. I don't really like that. But if there's a specific message that resonates with someone, absolutely do that and share with them, share with your community. That's one of the best things you can do. So feel free again to start your branding journey today. And again, if you'd like to, tag me, tag your friends, whoever it might be. It wouldn't be a branding conversation if I did not share my socials and the best ways to get in contact with me. I'm best reached on YouTube, Ken G, LinkedIn, also Ken G. I still respond to every YouTube comment that I get. I cannot say the same about LinkedIn messages. I get just a few too many to be able to focus on multiple channels. On Twitter, feel free to join the 66 Days of Data community if that's something that's interesting to you. My GitHub, Medium, the podcast Ken's Nearest Neighbors, and on Instagram if that would be interesting. That is all that I have for the content portion today. I would love to take any questions, and I hope we all learned something here and have something to show for it as we go forward.